because we've got to jump into the Jeffrey Epstein story, which is one of the biggest stories of the year. And, of course, you remember the Jeffrey Epstein story has been festering for well over 10 years when he was originally, sort of arrested and then pled guilty to a very reduced charge back in 2008. And, of course, this year, suddenly his name popped back up in midsummer, and all of a sudden he was arrested again and looked like he was going to maybe be tried for some of his actual crimes up in the Southern District of New York. But then he attempted suicide, and they put him on suicide watch. And then they took him off suicide watch, and on August 10th of this year, he was actually successful in committing suicide. And most of us know that story. And, of course, we say he was successful in committing suicide, but, I mean, one of the big stories of the year is everybody saying Epstein didn't kill himself. And, I tend to agree with that thought process, that maybe that's the least likely explanation, was that Epstein actually killed himself. And maybe it's more likely that he was killed, and or if you really want to go out there, maybe he didn't die at all, but we don't have time to get into that. We did want to bring you a couple of quick nuggets related to the Epstein story, and we're going to have to really move fast to get through these because I bet you haven't heard these. But if you didn't know, Business Insider has reported that Jeffrey Epstein was actually in the process of attempting to marry his 24-year-old goddaughter, Selena Dubin, who's a daughter. You're giving me a funny look. I guess you haven't heard this one,
I did
Shriner.
not hear that one.
She's the daughter of hedge fund manager Glenn Dubin of Highbridge Capital and his wife, Eva Anderson Dubin, a former Miss Sweden who you may remember dated Jeffrey Epstein back in the 1980s. Now, in 2014, so this is, 6 years after Epstein was convicted of engaging a minor prostitute, he made Selena Dubin, the daughter, who at that time would have been 19 years old, a benefactor of one of his trusts. And interestingly, the famous person who's accused a lot of these people, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, said that she was actually forced to have relations with Glenn Dubin at one point, although Glenn Dubin has strenuously denied those allegations. Now, in what I think is interesting about this relationship, which is longstanding with the Dubins, is that back in 2009, they actually sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein's probation officer saying that they were perfectly comfortable with Jeff Epstein spending time with their 14-year-old daughter, Selena, and she, of course, referred to him as Uncle Jeff. But this year, when all the big allegations came out and actually made major news, and everybody was aware, although you could have been aware earlier, but this year is when it kind of made major news and was accepted by the mainstream that Epstein really did these bad things, the Dubins came out and said that they were horrified by Jeffrey Epstein's despicable conduct, and had they been aware of it, they would have cut off all ties instantly. Well, that just sort of doesn't ring completely true based on all their long-standing relationships with him, and they're letting their daughter be around him as well, which is very, very strange. Even more strange than this is the new allegations that have come out. And, of course, we told you about this back in August on the Morgan Streetman show, that this was a story that was out there, that we didn't have the resources to go and report on it. But now a gentleman named Dylan Howard, who's an investigative reporter, has gone out and done the research, and he's published a book called Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. And Dylan Howard basically posits that Jeffrey Epstein was a high-level intelligence operative for the Israeli Mossad and other intelligence services internationally. Now, something that happened 23rd December of this year was an article was published on Medium.com. And if you're interested in the Epstein story, you've got to go out there and check this out, because Dylan Howard interviewed a guy named Stephen Hoffenberg. Now, Hoffenberg was a longtime partner with Epstein from 87 to the mid-90s, when Hoffenberg was finally busted as part of the Towers Financial Ponzi scheme. That was a debt collection company where they were taking investors' money and using the company as a Ponzi scheme. And he wound up serving 18 years in prison. But Hoffenberg said during the interview that Epstein admitted to him that Epstein was a spy, that he was a top-level agent for the Israeli Mossad. And Hoffenberg said Epstein's got Prince Andrew, quote, pinned to the wall. Now, there's a lot more to this story to look into, and obviously the music's here, so we're not going to get to cover it. But, Hoffenberg does things like confirm that the reason Epstein didn't get in trouble in 2008 was that he was a high-level Israeli Mossad agent. He also said Epstein was involved with the FBI and the CIA, but that he was actually using those agencies. Very interesting story. Folks, I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.